Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 278 of Kouryer Podcast. Our today's guest is Mr. Tayler Olivas. He's a concept artist from California, United States. And of course, in the captions, you can find the IT to his Instagram account, the link to his ArtStation YouTube channel, and Linktree as well, which contains all the other extra links that you might, need or want. And of course, before I jump into the questions, I need to quickly mention that I have a little funny story about this episode. Originally, this episode was supposed to be recorded on 14th of November of 2021, so roughly 3 years and 3 months ago. But since I archive everything and I have OCD about everything, and I have an archive of unfinished podcasts that couldn't be done for any reasons, I started messaging a lot of people that were on it. It was like 7-8 episodes, right? And of course, Tayler Olivas was one of them. And I messaged him, and we're here now at 20th of March of 2024, 9:19 p.m. Istanbul time.
We're here.
Yeah,
it's made it
late than ever, right?
Yeah, and we could do it.
Yeah, man. How are you doing today?
Doing great. It's perfect weather here in California. I really just want to be outside today, but I've been good. But thanks for having me on here. Really appreciate you bringing me on.
Yeah, speaking of outside, I haven't been outside in 3 days. I've been just nonstop editing different episodes. Like
the hermit life. You're in monk mode right now.
Unfortunately, yes. But, right now, with your episode included, I have 15 episodes to edit and upload.
Oh my gosh.
So, yes. And tomorrow there's another one. There's going to be the episode 282, that are booked. But after that, there's going to be more people I need to message as reminders. But yeah. So I hope people are enjoying the little bit of behind the scenes, stuff that's going on. But that out of the way, let's jump into the first question of the podcast. Sure. So the first thing I always ask everyone is give us a little introduction on how we got into the world of visual arts and design. Basically, tell us our origin story of, what led you to get on a path of art,
Yeah, that's a good question. This started off when I was really young. I feel like I've always had an inclination to do art. Just like any other just boy with a sketchbook, I would just draw army men, dinosaurs fighting each other with rockets, and just crazy imagination, just going wild. And I had support from my parents too, especially from my grandmother. When I would go to her house, that was the first thing she would do is hand me a sketchbook or hand me Legos, and I would just go ham for so long. But I think that kind of progressed later on in life. In high school, I would take more advanced classes and learn a little bit more foundations, and eventually got to a point where, I had to leave my hometown of Hanford, California, which if you look it up on the map, it's in the center of California. And when you think of California, sunny, sunsets and palm trees and beaches, it's the complete opposite. It's just a cow town. Most people go into agriculture or work in the different factories around the area. And for me, it was more of a means to get out of Hanford and actually learn art from an institution that could teach me how to do entertainment art. Growing up, that was my escape, was playing games, watching films was kind of a way to escape and see something greater if I wasn't able to travel to a beautiful place in California. But that brought me here to Laguna Beach, which I'm still living around the area. That's where I learned pretty much all my foundations in design. And I got to meet a few of the people I've had the privilege of working with over at Riot Games or Insomniac. But yeah, it's been a journey, and I'm still kind of on the path of mastery and learning as I go. So it's a never-ending journey.
Oh, yeah. And so here's the thing that's kind of interesting about the environment you grew up in. You mentioned there's just all many industrial agricultural factories around you and stuff like that. So I was wondering, in that situation, let's say when you were in high school or in your teenage years, were there any pressure from the families or teachers or something to just pursue a safe job or something that's everyone's doing and have art on the side, since you don't know? I don't know. I assume, in your teens, you were in early 2000s, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, around those time, entertainment industry, of course, it was, sprouting a bit, but it wasn't as big as today.
Yeah, not as big. Yeah. But yeah, to answer that question, there's a lot of resistance, definitely. Whether it was through peers or just the track that high school leads you on. At least mine was very focused on get your degree, like do all the extracurriculars and go to a college in California, like one of the UCs or CSUs is what they're called. And they're the public universities in California. And it's like just a feeder program to get you into like an engineering or a program that has some sort of high salary that can, allow you to live comfortably. So that was always the track, at least for the classes I was in. But I did have a couple of teachers who were very supportive, though, and they saw my actual passion for artwork. And back then, my art was terrible, but I think they saw that I had a passion for actually making stuff and learning more through the process. And they just really bolstered me up and helped me to just really go all in on it. And that's one of the reasons why I actually didn't go to one of the UCs, was because I really needed to take time to not go into a program that I didn't want to really study. Like engineering was a thought I had. I wanted to go into engineering and do computer science for games, but I was like, I need to go to community college and really take some time to figure this out, not waste money, and maybe take some more classes and take some more time to really learn exactly how to navigate this path of entertainment design. Like what's the right steps for this? So, but yeah, there was a lot of resistance, and I didn't really have a big group of artists. Like in Orange County here, there's a lot of communities of artists you can kind of mingle with, and it's like 40 minutes you drive and you can do like a plein air workshop with someone, or you can go to like a sketch party at a cafe. But in Hanford, there's none of that. So it's just trying to learn on my own, and having a couple of friends that were in with me on the process of learning art, where they had their own discipline they were really grinding at. Holding those people close was really helpful for me, especially back in the Valley of California.
All right, awesome. And speaking of, like a specific branch of design, or there are different ways that they were going as well. You guys were having kind of quite similar paths, but at the same time different routes, right? When it comes to like art and the
Mm-hmm.
position, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
speaking of that, of course, in the introduction, I mentioned you're a concept artist, but during this whole journey that you just explained to us, at one point you decided that, all right, I want to be a concept artist. Like this thing is mine. I don't want to be like a,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, like keyframe artist, like I don't know, the background artist. I want to be concept artist in a specific. Like, what made that? What was that eureka moment for you?
Yeah, it was actually when I went to college in Laguna Beach, because I went into a program for illustration, and I was thinking I'm going to do illustrations like Norman Rockwell or like Magic the Gathering illustrations. And I started to realize that a lot of the foundational classes were just like doing illustrations for children's books, or just like the illustrations I didn't want to do. But I had a roommate who was in a game art program, and they were focusing on concept design. And I would see his work, and I would see like all the stuff he would do in his sketchbook or the assignments that they would have. And it was just like, oh, this is like actually like thinking. This is like problem solving. This is like something that you can really apply to almost like any type of IP. You're going to need someone to come up with ideas and generate them and solve problems that are on scripts. So just seeing his coursework, it kind of shifted and started studying concept art a little bit more seriously. And like all my friends in college, we would just go to the library and pick up the art of books for like Star Wars or even like Skillful Huntsman. And that was like our real fire to become concept artists. We would see like these works and see all the work involved in the concept process, the blue sky process of creating films or games. It's like, okay, this is the sweet spot. This is like what I want to do. Like I love being curious. I love like researching. I love studying. And when I can accumulate all that research and study into something that's cohesive, that works for an IP or that can fit in a certain genre, it's just like so satisfying to me. And I always like, whenever I see like a movie like Dune 2 just came out, and seeing all the artwork there and all of the design that goes into the world building, it's just like so satisfying to me. And it's just like one of my favorite things is just like, oh, this feels original. This feels new. but it's just like smart people problem solving and coming up with design based on a lot of research and a lot of love that they're putting into the projects too.
All right. And speaking of projects, you've worked on, quite a few actually. Like, there was, the Teamfight Tactics on Riot, if I'm not mistaken. And also recently you worked on Spider-Man 2, if I'm not mistaken. Is that correct?
Yeah.
All right. So could you tell us a little bit of like your story, how those opportunities came by and, how was the whole process on both of them?
Yeah. So those, I feel like those kind of happened during a time when there was a lot of work going around. This was like the COVID era. I think this was like 2020, 2021, where everyone was moving back home. There was a lot of remote work, and also a lot of these game companies were getting a lot of funding and really cheap loans to build out their projects. So they're spending money and hiring people, and I was luckily one of the people that was allowed onto these projects. But outside of the luck of just the moment of the situation, these were like word of mouth jobs where it was a friend I had worked with in the past who, they weren't going to take on the job over at Riot. So they recommended me instead. And they believed that I was a good fit. And it turned out that, I was pretty helpful on those projects. But yeah, those were just through friends that I had made in the past or people I had worked with. And sometimes they can't take on work. So the referral goes to you. And I was lucky enough to jump on those projects.
And do you have any fun memories of working on those?
I love both projects, and they both make me want to go back into cinematics, especially just that part of the process. At least for Teamfight Tactics was really really fun because working with like the storyboard artist and using 3D blockouts and concepting exactly like what the bookshelves were going to be in this environment and handing that off to the production artist who made the stuff look even better. Just like being a part of that process of building sets and seeing it all come to life and look even better than you made it look like in your concepts. It's like super satisfying. And that was really like one of the first projects I worked on where everyone was super, super professional. Like Riot Games, everyone's locked in. Like everyone kind of knows their duties and they go even beyond like what they're asked. It's just like, okay, this is like how you make good products is you hire really good talent who are just like really specialized in what they do, and you give them a task, and if they can all work together, they make something that looks really awesome at the end.
Yeah. And by the way, folks, if you've been listening to this now, I just need to quickly mention something. That in the captions, you can find a link to a Gumroad for a gouache brush pack. So if you want to support our today's guest, you can definitely do so by, going there. And, of course, if you can, you can give it as a gift to a friend who's an illustrator if you're not yourself. And it has like, perfect rating. And, so, you can definitely, there was some dude who gave it, I guess, a 3-star, which is the only, like, it's 20 ratings and 4.9. I don't, that's interesting. Yeah.
And I had one person that gave me 1 star, and I was able to track down they reverted it. Let me tell you the story though. So yeah, cool, I reached out to them and I was like, oh, like what's wrong with this? Like I actually wanted like some feedback. If you're going to give me 1 star, at least tell me like why it's so shitty. So I reached out to the person. They're like, I can't download it. And I had to like walk them through the process in Gumroad to download it. They eventually got the brush pack and they're like, oh, I love these brushes. And I was like, can you like change that back to like maybe a 5-star? So I was able to change that. But yeah, like sometimes when if it's a bad review, like tell me why, like, let me make it better.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I just need to check something here because I think someone was calling me. Yeah, I usually keep my phone on vibrate for, emergencies and yeah.
Oh, you're okay.
Yeah. And all right, that's interesting. But there's someone who gave a 3-star rating. That's going to be an interesting story.
Yeah, I'm going to track them down. Okay.
That would be cool. Yeah, but for anyone who's listening, a lot of the artworks you can see below. I'm just going to put samples of the brush back in the, if you're watching this on YouTube, you can see this above us, obviously. And yeah, so if you're interested that you want to give it to someone, definitely do so. And along the way, you'll
Oh,
support
yeah.
our guests as well. So yeah,
Yeah.
with that
Thanks
being
for that.
said, yeah, my pleasure, man. And with that being said, let's go to the next topic, which is now we talked about your journey on your works on different projects that you've been doing, but now I want to go to the nitty gritty of this situation, which is how does
Mhm.
your design process usually go anytime you want to start working on a new piece or a project? Basically, I know it's different for personal projects and professional projects. So could you please
Mhm.
elaborate on that, on for both versions? Basically, what does the structure of a pipeline look like?
Mhm. That's a really good question. Yeah, it is. It is different for every job too. The process sometimes changes, especially for Teamfight Tactics versus Spider-Man. It was a completely different process of working, and in terms of time too, it's for Spider-Man, I feel like I had a little bit more time to flesh stuff out. But regarding my personal work, you know, um, I really value art directors on the job. They're able to kind of hone in your skills and make things better and more appropriate towards whatever type of tone, setting, story you're going for. They're the people that kind of are able to hone you in on exactly like what your vision or what the vision of the project should look like. And when you're doing your own personal work, you don't really have an art director to help you and guide you and um, really make sure that your work is the best that it can be. So um, that's where my process kind of gets a little bit more loose, and I can spend a lot of time in the iterative stage and just coming up with a bunch of different random ideas. And instead of now let me try to phrase this and make it make sense. So in concept, you're doing a lot of iterations on design, and usually the goal is to kind of single down all of those variations into one final design that it's finished at a level where it should be production ready. It should look like it can work in production. But for my own personal work, it's like instead of singling down all those concepts into one, it's like I can take like one of those concepts and build an entire story out of that, another one in this stage and build it out in its own story there. So um, for my personal work, that's also like an issue I'm trying to solve, is really refining stuff and not going on different tangents and going into different areas that might not be worth exploring. um, so in my own personal life, that's where I've kind of been, is like thriving in the chaos and really just going in that idea mode and playing around with stuff and doing really loose sketched versions and publishing them and seeing if this is something that I want to keep working on. Like recently I've been doing a lot of like skeleton robots in VR, and it's been a lot of fun. And it's like in my mind I have this whole vision for this world and what it could look like, but it's not there yet. These are just like little seedlings of ideas. Versus like some other things I've been doing, like illustrations for these like airplanes called P-51 Mustangs, and been trying to depict this story of the Tuskegee Airmen, and they have a really interesting look to their airplanes, and it's a really cool story that I feel like a lot of people don't talk about enough. And I've just been doing illustrations for different scenes involving those planes. So um, yeah, for my personal work, can just go on forever and it can never finish. But I feel like that's like the best personal projects that I've seen too. It's the ones that are not finished yet. Like Simon Stollenhag's work has been a huge inspiration for me. And he's been doing like book after book after book. And it's this common thread line throughout all these books, but each story is a little bit different. It's in, maybe in California for this book, or, it's on the complete opposite side of the world. So that's kind of how my process differs from production work. Is it, production work gets completed and finished and it gets shipped off at a certain point. But for personal work, it's like a process of really iterating and playing around and just using my ideas as like a sandbox to build from, if that makes sense.
Oh yeah, and actually, speaking of the skeleton robots, those are the gravity sketch pieces you've been posting, right?
Yeah, it's a mix of Gravity Sketch. I've been using Adobe Medium too for those, but yeah, I'll sketch those out in VR, and then I'll bring those back to Blender and do all the lighting and render out some animations for those ones.
How does it feel like? Does it feel like because I've heard a lot of people who feel kind of sick after using VR a lot. Have you ever had any
Mm-hmm.
of those issues, or it's been just you used to it?
Yeah, yeah. Um, yeah, I've had issues with VR in the past. Like I used to have a MetaQuest 2, but I just upgraded to the 3. And because I have glasses too, it's kind of a pain in the ass to put on the headset and take it off with glasses. So I actually found a company that they do custom prescription inserts where you can put them in your VR headset. So I got those, and it completely changed everything for me. So if you've got glasses and you're trying to get into VR, I would definitely look into that. They just take your prescription and then they cut out little lenses that you can put in your headset, and it makes it so much more comfortable. But yeah, in terms of like getting headaches, like there is like eye strain for sure if you're in there for a long time. So like I have like a little cooking timer here all set for like 30 minutes or so. So it goes off and I'm like, okay, I need to get out of here for a second. Um, that's one thing I hope they fix, but we'll see. I haven't tried the Apple headset yet, but it looks amazing. I've been seeing some really cool stuff.
Yeah, I mean, like I don't know, like I've used VR before, but not the digital art. I mean, of course, for video games, but at the same time, like it feels a little bit. I don't know, maybe it's just me dizziness. It's
Mm-hmm.
like the thing with like I honestly, I don't know, like I think the progress should be made more in AR technology, like augmented
Yeah,
reality more than
yeah.
like VR, because like working with Kinect, for example. I don't know if you've used Kinect on Xbox.
Mm-hmm.
It
Yeah,
was
yeah.
pretty nice. I think that's. I'm not sure, by the way. I'm not very tech savvy, but I think that's technically like AR technology, if I'm not no mistaken. I guess.
Yeah,
I guess
I think so, right? Yeah, because you're interacting with
augmented reality in a sense.
your
Yeah,
environment. Yeah,
yeah, and yeah, I think that must be much cooler, right?
yeah. I really do think that's where things are going to go, is that pass through mode where you can interact with your environment. I also saw someone, they had the Apple headset and they were modeling in Blender, but they were able to take the object out of their monitor and put it on their table and rotate it around, but they were also editing it in Blender at the same time. And the craziest thing was that that model that they had that was like virtually in their room, it was actually following the right laws of logic and light, like that was hitting the object. So they were like turning it around, and somehow Apple, like the headset, could sense it. That's like a softer light. This is like a direct light, and it was affecting the metal on this object. It was crazy. So it was like, like this is the future. Like the form factor for the headsets are going to get smaller. The processing speed is going to get faster. Um, but I do think, yeah, we're going to have a product where you can interact with your keyboard, or you can interact with like sizing and scaling, especially for 3D printing. I could see like how useful that's going to be. You can just test out exactly what it's going to look like on your desk, and you don't even have to print it. You don't have to do a test print. You can kind of see how that works. Or for like manufacturing and like vehicles, it's like you just get your Porsche in the garage right there, and you want to do a custom spoiler for it. You just put on a headset and you start drawing on top of it in real space, and you're already halfway there. You don't have to go into program. You just import your mesh data and clean it up and print it out or manufacture it however you want. So yeah, I think there's a lot of potential with VR in the future, even now.
Oh yeah, definitely. But about the thing you mentioned with the Apple product thing and the guy working Blender, was that like actually working, or was it just a video edit?
No, it was real time. Yeah, it wasn't like a complicated model, but I'm sure even if you had thousands, if not millions, of polygons, it could still process it. Um, but yeah, it was just, I saw it on Twitter somewhere. I was like, dude, this is crazy. Like, this is so powerful. Like, yeah, that type of stuff gets me really hyped up about like making art digitally. It's like, oh, there's like so many different tools you can use to come up with ideas or bring your sketches to life in a different media.
Oh yeah, definitely. And during your answer to the previous question about the art process, you mentioned some artists that uh, were really inspirational to you. But now it kind of has connection to the next question I want to ask, which is
Mm-hmm.
who are some of your favorite artists and designers that have inspired you the most?
Ooh, oh, I like this question. Yeah, I remember like I had a concept class where we had to actually like list our inspirations, and I just had a whole list of them. But yeah, like a lot of like the 70s illustrators are super inspiring to me, especially like the sci-fi illustrators from like Art Center, the heydays of like Art Center, like Sid Mead. Um, I don't know if Ralph McQuarrie went to Art Center, but his work for Star Wars is just so impressive. And that's like, that to me is like what I am aspiring to. Definitely not hitting it at all right now, but um, just like the level of design, like authenticity, originalness, like coolness. There's a cool factor to their work too. And also to know that these guys were designing and painting all this stuff in gouache is just crazy to me, because I do landscape painting in gouache, just like little sketches outside. And it's a really hard medium to control, especially for like metallic surfaces, and just it just blows my mind. Like I was able to go to an exhibition with Sid Mead's work. They were featuring a lot of his work, and I got to look up close and see all the brushwork. It's just like, man, like these guys were artists. These guys were fucking awesome. Um, so yeah, those old school guys, NC Wyeth, obviously, like just like his dreamy like storytelling of like Robin Hood, or just yeah, his illustrations for stories, just like so dreamy, and that's something I really like. Trying to get that in my work a little bit more too, is like that nostalgic dreaminess, that like serendipity, like the feeling of actually being out in nature, like trying to pull that from their work in nature in my own work as well. But that's really what inspires me.
All right, now that's kind of interesting because speaking of storytelling, we recently had a group discussion podcast, like I think last Sunday, and we talked for 2 hours and 40 minutes about the storytelling in art. So for anyone
Oh,
who's interested,
nice.
go to the Kouryer Podcast YouTube channel. There's a playlist called Kouryer Cast. These I just started this like new form of content, and it's just previous guests of the podcast. I randomly pick them, and just we have like a 6-person like panel, and we talk about a certain topic.
Oh,
And that
nice.
podcast was really good as well. But now here's the thing: speaking of storytelling, I'm sure yourself and a lot of other artists, aside from the fact that we all have this fantastical dream to, I don't know, work in the industry and make money and live by making in the process of video games and all that cool stuff, right? At the same time, I think there's a desire in all of us to express ourselves kind of like personally. So what I want to like kind of segue into is about personal work and personal projects. I mean, you kind of
Mhm.
mentioned the robot skeleton thingies you're working in Gravit Sketch, but I was just wondering, are you working on any other stuff aside from that? Like basically tell us a little bit about your, personal works, and, what do you think of, how should artists, approach this whole subject of personal work and brand and all that stuff? Because it's not just working in the
Mhm.
industry, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So we kind of touched on it a little bit with personal work. And right now, like it really looks like just a bunch of folders inside of folders on my desktop. Um, but yeah, that's kind of like a personal thing. Is like, how do you approach personal work? Like, are you building a comic? Are you trying to model something out? It's going to be a little bit different for everyone. But for me, it always starts off with, like a notebook, like coming up with ideas. I think writing is really, really underrated. Um, Even journaling. So like that's where I pull out a lot of my ideas, at least for like original work that I'm trying to do. So I always start with like words or certain types of key phrases. Sometimes it's like a train of thought that I might have, like, or looking back at games that inspired me. Like recently, a lot of my personal work has been inspired by games like Fallout or like Borderlands or Jack and Daxter, like these games that are now becoming like nostalgic. It's kind of crazy that some of these are like 20 years old. Jack and Daxter, I think, is like over 20 years old or something like that. It might be. I might be wrong, but like for me, like looking at things in my past has been really important for me to come up with stuff that feels authentic to me, at least in my own personal work. Um, and I think a lot of people too, when they're doing personal work, they get caught up in, like the anxiety or fear of people not being receptive to what they're doing. And that stops them from actually doing a certain type of work or being authentic. And for me, I'm just trying to like steam ahead and just do what I want to do. Whether that's involving a new method, like using Gravity Sketch to incorporate that in my own personal work, or doing traditional painting. For me, it's just an exploration into different types of stuff that I have on my notebook and my sketchbook, like trying to bring those ideas to life. But yeah, if you're trying to come up with something original or trying to tell a new story, just remember that most things that feel original are usually going to be remixes of things coming together, and it feels new and like really fresh because these people are bringing themselves into the project and their own personal experiences. But a lot of what you're seeing is just things that already exist in real life, but they're just mixed in different ratios together to feel unique and different. But yeah, always be sketching. Journaling, I think, as a concept artist, that's a must. Like you always have to be like really searching deep within to like, what are your interests? Like where's your inspiration coming from?
Oh yeah, definitely. And speaking of inspirations, I'm sure we talked about the artists that have inspired you, but I'm sure there are a lot of people right now, or there's going to be a lot of people in the future who's going to be inspired by your works to some extent. So, in extension to that, I want to ask you, what would you like to be known for actually as an artist? Like, let's say if we can flash forward right now in the ideal version of your life in 20, 30 years, right? In 40 years, I don't know. And what would you like to be known for when it comes to your art?
Man, I really don't think about that too much, honestly. I'd really just want to be known for being the artist that tries to push boundaries with different tools, or being the artist that can come up with beautiful artwork or stuff that kind of hits your soul, like regardless of like what type of medium I'm using, whether that's just using gouache or something in my sketchbook or like a finalized project, like just making people like feel something, like serendipity is like a word, or like awe, like these emotions like that I feel whenever I watch like a movie or play a game and I'm like awestruck, like that type of feeling. I think that might be the best way to describe it, is a sense of awe or wonder, or sparks curiosity in someone else to kind of investigate further, or make their own thing or be inspired by it. I think at the end of the day, it's me trying to make other people feel the same way that I do when I look at great art.
All right. And what are you working on right now that you can tell us about? What kind of project is it? I mean, of course, there's like a high chance that NDAs are involved. But if that's not the case, what are you doing right now with art? I mean, both for personal and professional.
Yeah, right now, I've actually been getting more into education, doing a little bit more teaching. I've really been wanting to actually start my own courses and teach people like the process that I use for production work, using 3D tools and using painting on top of that. I've talked to a lot of artists who are afraid of using 3D tools and 3D software. They're intimidated by Blender or just like opening up the software and moving around polygons. So that's something I've been actually focusing on, is like building a potential course where I can like teach people who want to learn 3D in a non-intimidating way where they can pick it up and incorporate it into their own process. But other than that, I've just been chipping away at my own personal projects, whether that's just bringing my sketches to life or trying different types of techniques or software. Like right now, I feel like I'm in like a sabbatical mode, or I've been developing my own personal work and growing and also taking a ton of classes on the side. Just taking smaller classes or looking up tutorials for things that I don't know yet and filling in the gaps right now.
Speaking of making a Blender course for artists who might be intimidated, but that's actually such a good idea. And might I make a suggestion about that?
Yeah, actually, yeah.
I think a really good strategy would be to make it like a 30-40 minute comprehensive tutorial for like, kickstarting this whole, series on and set it for free on YouTube and make it as high quality as possible with the thumbnails and everything. And, even you can ask people to share it around. I'll share it around for you if you want.
I appreciate
as well.
that.
And but then after that, in the end of the video, you should say, all right, if you want to, for example, see a sample of like these 3 works that I did with Blender quickly and we made concept art with them, you can go to Gumroad and buy this course or something like that. And you can make, actually, because I've had a lot of concept artists, asking me, I mean, I'm not a great 3D artist as well, to be honest, myself. I'm not, but yeah, a lot of my friends are all 3D artists, but they see me doing 3D, they ask me for help, and I can see the frustrations where they are. Like they just want they just want to quickly know how to use assets, set a scene up, set a lighting, quick lighting up, and make this scene quickly. And like, because one of my friends told me in his job, like his supervisor, quickly makes a quick environment, in Blender with all this ready-made assets, and he has no idea how. Like, you could make, a series of those, like maybe, I don't know, an abandoned, like city shack area, like I don't know, just there's so many things you can do, like 2-3 samples and say, hey, if you want to see more of these, explanations and things like that, you can just buy my Gumroad thing, you'll support me as well. Or you could just make it a course so people wouldn't necessarily have access to the files, if that's better,
Yeah, I do like that idea of like decentralized education or education becoming more decentralized now, where it's like I went to art school and that was a high premium to pay for knowledge. But now it's like, if I was to try to learn the same things now, it would cost me a percentage of what I had to pay for art school. And I love that idea. I love the idea of information becoming more readily available. And yeah, maybe I'll have to do that where it's just a free course, but then, yeah, you want to learn the specifics, like here's how to do it, because most people probably don't want to know how to do that in a free YouTube video in the first place. That's a good idea, actually.
Yeah, because to be honest, if I was in anyone's shoes who wanted to learn Blender for 2D, I'm gonna be honest, I'm not going to pay for any course. I'm a cheap person. I said there you go. So I'll probably try to like find a free alternative, right? But in this case, I think if you just make a quick 20-30 minute video to just quickly, go through the basics, in an intuitive way, then at the end, when you hook the person who's willing and actually learns a lot from it, they have 2 options: either continue with the same style of the teaching they've just been, working with for the past 30-40 minutes and continue to learn more and quickly, basically you should have this kind of mindset when you want to make this tutorial, in my opinion, that the person who's going to watch this can, learn the basics as quickly as possible in a weekend. And make an example project as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Have the mindset.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's my goal, is to make it as simple as possible. Like, just make it easily digestible where people can just pick it up and they can just learn. And it's very straightforward. Like that's what I love, is when someone has like a sense of brevity, meaning that they can describe things really simply in simple terms. It's like, that's what I want to bring to the table. Cause like there's so many tutorials out there that are so complex. And I think that's what's intimidating, is there's like, it's deep 3D. You can learn that forever. Like there's so many things to learn about 3D, but like a lot of my friends that want to learn Blender, they're already very, very good painters and they have very good foundational skills. And it's like, dude, you could just open up Blender and like have cylinders, just put them in place and you just paint over them, and like you just have lighting, and then now it opens up the doors for variations. Now, when your art director asks you to do 3 different shots of the same scene, you've already got it in place. You've already got like the building blocks. Now, if you need to refine stuff in 3D, it's just a matter of learning that next step. So I'm trying to like put myself in their shoes and see like what's the best way to learn Blender for their certain situation, right? Um, and that's different from someone who's trying to do like production work, someone who's trying to be an environment artist and actually optimize stuff and make sure that your texture baking is perfect in your normal maps or blah blah blah. So yeah, that's something I've been thinking about a lot lately.
Yeah, and man, best of luck, honestly.
Yeah, thank
And
you.
yeah, and if one day you actually come up with a course, this was one of the original conversations you had, so you always have this on record. So that's the cool thing about a
It's in the
podcast, right?
archives.
Exactly. And speaking of, we talked a lot of things about art right now, but I want to ask you something else. What other completely non-art related stuff you got going on in your life right now? Maybe something you want to learn, something you're learning currently or doing, or maybe you have an ambition or aspiration or something. You just want to do something in your
Yeah.
life that's going on.
Oh
That is
man, everything. I want to
non-art
learn
related,
everything, bro. Like
dude. Non-art.
yeah. There's so many things I want to learn, dude. But recently I've been getting more into physical fitness. Like um yeah, just seeing like all the information that's out there for like self optimization is kind of like woke me up. It's like, okay, I need to like do certain things to like optimize my life, especially I don't know, I consider myself kind of ambitious. Like I have all these like crazy goals that I want to hit, and it's going to be easier if I'm like self-optimized and I'm a little bit more fit. So like I just got back on my road bike and I've been working out every morning. So I mean just in terms of stuff outside of art, that's like been one of my focuses. But um I guess something that's maybe even like more design focused is like learning about cars more. Like that's been one of my passions recently. Like especially in Southern California, there's like so many different car clubs, and there's like so many different events where people will bring out their cars, and a lot of these guys have custom work, and it's like, oh my gosh, like there's like so much to learn here. There's like so much design work that goes into building a car and making it track ready, or you're just trying to show it off. Like there's certain things that you can learn about for manufacturing, or um, like even building cars from the ground up, just like using a frame and building a body on top of that and importing an engine. um, so that's been a big interest of mine, is more like manufacturing and that side of things, especially with automotive. But there's maybe something your viewers can look up. Actually, there's a company called Ruffian Motorsports. I think that's what they're called. If you look up Ruffian Auto, they should show up. But this guy, he used to actually own a part of Turtle Rock, and this is a design or a game studio that made Back for Blood. But he sold part of his company off, and now what he's doing is he's just building cars, and he has like all his friends come in and help him manufacture these cars, and they're all custom. And it's like, this is like so cool. You have a person who's a game designer who's now building cars and is hiring artists to come up with like custom cars, and it's just like it's blowing up now. Like he's got a lot of followers, and he's been showing his cars off at different conventions and winning awards. But yeah, that's definitely been a big part of my interest lately, is like automotive design, and that whole world, that side of design, just so interesting to me.
Yeah, I've always wondered why there's not many like custom cars. Like, is it because of, I don't know, like regulations by traffic police or something like that? Like,
Mm-hmm.
like I'm sure there are a lot of people who are into super deep into tuning and stuff like that, but like I've always wondered why there's not like custom exteriors that much. Why there's not like just like in a video game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah, you don't see it much really. But yeah, now you can manufacture parts. There's like even 3D printing for like certain parts, like carbon fiber. molding is like becoming more of a thing. But yeah, in California, there's like so many regulations for your cars. But like you go to these shows and you can tell someone's, they're riding a car that's not going to pass if they get pulled over. Um, they have like an inspection or something. So I think a lot of it comes down to just like the manufacturing part of it, getting a design to actually be produced to where you can send those body parts off to someone and actually have a mechanic across the nation that knows how to put those body panels in. And this is me speaking as someone who doesn't know too much about that part of automotive, but I think there's a lot more moving parts on that side of things. Yeah, versus game design, you can build it out in Blender and texture it on your computer, and just the same machine, just one machine to make a final product, from pre-production to production. Versus for cars, you need designer, you need someone to specialize in CAD programs, you need like milling, printing, like a paint section, all these different components. That's my best guess.
All right. And well, we've reached the final question and section of the podcast, which is called Time Capsule. And assuming, as you mentioned, you listened to a couple of episodes before, so you can kind of, guess how this one's going to go as well, this question. But I'm just to reiterate, basically what I said in the previous episodes. I'm just going to say it again here. Basically, imagine you had only a couple of minutes, like a short window of time, to tell us and summarize the most valuable lessons and tips or just things that you learned throughout your whole life till now as a human. And I mean, this part of the recording, imagine it's going to be heard by after you many generations later, many decades later. I know it sounds dramatic, but just I'm just trying to put it in perspective, if that makes sense.
No, this is a really good way to end the podcast, honestly, on this.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so what are some of the most valuable lessons and tips you've learned throughout your life?
Yeah. And wow. Yeah. So I really got into mastery. There's actually a book, I think by Robert Greene, called Mastery. And after reading that book, kind of led me on a different trail of learning and education. But, like throughout this whole process of being an artist, like you start to realize that, it's never going to end. You're always going to want to get better. So, and the job market changes. There's like fluctuations and cycles. So to be a professional artist, I think you need to have a level of perseverance and trusting the process. Like I see, especially now, like even professionals, like some people on LinkedIn are like literally changing jobs because of the market right now. And to me, that's just, it's sad to see, because like there's going to be bad times. There's also going to be good times, but you need to be prepared for the bad times. And one of the things that helps is being perseverant, like having that grit to move forward, even when things are bad. I think that's helped me out a lot. And I think that's one of the things that kind of helps you know exactly what you want to do or what you're passionate about, because you will be doing those things, even when times are bad, when markets are not so good, when you're in the dip, whatever you want to call that, when you're in a plateau, is having that perseverance to keep going forward. And that ties into, a bunch of other things too, like the compound effect. Something I wish I learned a lot earlier on is, 1% every day is actually a huge return over 365 days versus going 10%, every other week or so. Like having that consistency and trusting the compound process or the compound effect in your process to build up skills, or even right now, like in investing, like I've been getting more into that world and just seeing like, okay, this actually compounds if I put in a certain amount of money into a bank account and I'm consistent with it, and it's the same amount every month, that amount will just compound and grow over time. And the same thing is with yourself. Like you have to put in the 1% every day or try to keep pushing forward, having that perseverance. So yeah, don't give up. Like, moral of the story is, just got to keep
Or in
going.
another sense, you gotta have that dog in you, as people say, right?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And find that strength in different ways. Like for me, it's been exercise, like doing that in the morning, doing something tough, or going on a long bike ride where you have to endure and you have to get through, your 20-mile ride and going up the hills. Like doing tough things, I think is really good for you. Like exposing yourself to a little bit of pain that's not going to kill you, I think is very good. So you can train that muscle of perseverance and grit, or, yeah, just letting that dog out. Like just gotta find ways to do that.
Awesome. Solid advice, honestly. And thank you so much for taking the time out of your schedule and finally concluding this whole episode podcast thing after 3 years. I really appreciate that.
I'm glad we could do it. This was fun, man.
Yeah, man, definitely. And thank you to anyone who tuned in and listened to this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. If there's any quick comments, suggestions, or critiques, leave them down in the comment section down below, or you can send me a DM at the Kouryer Podcast Instagram page. And remember, I mentioned the brush bag. It's only $5, and you get 30 custom brush bags. I just have to mention that again, if you're still hesitant. And yeah, so it's kind of like $0.6 per brush in that. That's a good deal.
I've never broken it down like that. That's a good selling point. Yeah, it's less than
Yeah, and let's see who the 3-star guy was or girl was.
Might be anonymous. One of my haters.
They just bought it so they can leave a 3-star review.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much for coming by again, and take care, everyone. Stay safe till next episode. Bye bye.
All right. Peace, guys.